Hey everyone, welcome back for episode 7 of Zero to Hero. This is an insane episode. We did so many keys and pushed up such big scores, so be sure to stick around to the end to see how it went. We start off this week by opening our vault and looking at our options. So we don't have a lot of really amazing options, but we do have some 415 tier shoulders, so that's pretty solid. So that is what we are taking for our weekly vault. We start with a 17 Temple of the Jade Serpent. Not the best key, not the key that I was trying to start with, because, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience taking that key, especially not on Tyrannical weeks, where I have to deal with that third boss in the Heal Absorb. So I'm not super stoked about the key that we started with, but, you know, we're going to have to do it at some point anyways to reach our goal. So, not too bad. And just like always, we spend some time in LFG not getting invited to keys, so we end up having to do the thing that we always end up doing, which is just bite the bullet and post up our own key. Hey guys, do the YouTube thing. If you like the video, be sure to like and subscribe. A lot of you guys aren't subscribed. It's free for you, and it really helps me out a lot. Thank you guys so much. And I think it pays off, because we end up with a pretty good composition. We got a Lust, we have a Rogue to shroud the pandas, we have D-Curse for the Mistweavers. I'm pretty confident in this group. We have a mix of IOs in here, and our Paladin, our Holy Paladin, actually is the lowest IO in the group, but I noticed that he has only 1 week of keys done, and they're pretty good. So I risk it on him, and it pays off huge. This guy absolutely cranks the heals, absolutely amazing healer. Super happy that I found this guy to do this key specifically with. We make it through the first boss without any deaths on the board so far. And then we make it to Strife and Peril. And we do end up capping out the stacks on Peril right at the very end, so we end up wasting a little bit of time here. But it's not the end of the world. We're on great pace so far. Pretty good. We only have 1 random death, and it was from somebody missing the shroud. They walked into a mob while we were shrouding the pandas, but it's okay. We did that pull without them and then res them up. So we finish that boss, and then we move on. I do some pretty aggressive pulls in the courtyard, making sure that we never solo pull anything. We double pulled every single pack in this courtyard, or chain pulled them in triples, and I think that really saved a lot of time here. And also I saw that our group was capable of it, so I figured why not. And then we come over to this boss, and this is the boss that I was most scared of in this dungeon. And the reason is, this is a big tank reliant boss. So I tried to save all of my defensive cooldowns for the Jade phase, because that's what I see people do on higher keys. Now, I know Paladin is supposed to be really good at this fight, and I don't really know why, other than the fact that we can pretty much heal up the debuff with a single Wog, or maybe 2. So, if you're a pro Pally out there watching this video, let me know how this boss is supposed to be trivialized with our kit, because, you know, this is only my first time tanking it, so probably with some more XP I'd be able to figure it out. But we get through the whole fight without any issues, so I'm super happy about that. This is the one that I thought I was going to brick. And then, just as expected, we got through this last boss, no problem. Everyone happy, everyone healthy. Minute and 8 seconds left on the +2 timer. We got a juicy 106 IO from this, bringing us up to 2086. Only 414 points off of our 2500 goal. Now, we didn't get any loot out of this, but we did get big score, and we did get another 19 key. So we're able to push up even higher now. And luckily for us, it turned into a 19 Shadow Moon, which is absolutely awesome. Maybe we can get our first 20 in this week. So we did end up wiping on Ner'zhul in this 19 Shadow Moon 1 time, but we ended up recovering it, not +2ing, unfortunately. If we didn't wipe, we would have +2'd for sure. But we still got the key done, we still got the key timed, and that gives us our first 20 key, as well as a nice little juicy bit of 38 IO, bringing us up even closer. Again, no loot, so that kind of sucks, but, you know, we got into our 20 keys now. So, unfortunately, that key was a 20 Azure Vault, and I'm not too excited about having to run that, because if history is any example, we just have to keep on running our own keys, otherwise we sit in LFG forever, never getting invited. And I understand, why would anybody take a 396 item level Prot Pala with, you know, 2100 IO into their +18, 19, 20 keys? And we're not trying to do anything below 16s at all this week, because 16s will give us our primal concentrated infusions. so we can rank up our spark gear to 418. I'm not really trying to waste my time doing anything under a 16, and it's really hard getting into groups for 16s because of my item level and my gear. So we're kind of just stuck with this, but we don't give up hope, and we try to hit up LFG before we face the music of our 20 Azure Vault. After quite some time, we end up getting invited to a 17 Ruby life pools, and at this point in the key, it's looking pretty good. We only have one death going into Meldrusa Chillwarn here, and we finish off the boss without any issues and move on with the rest of the key. Unfortunately, we run into some shenanigans here, and our healer's not able to keep us up through the AoE of the Blazebound Firestorm, and we end up wiping on this boss, which was super unfortunate because we were on a really good pace here. But I asked if they want to continue and complete the key, or whether they just want to leave. They say that they want to complete after this wipe here. It's pretty unfortunate. We were within 200k, 300k of killing off this boss, and sometimes that's just the way it goes, you know? If it's not played perfectly, especially on these tyrannical grievous weeks, you could have some pretty unlucky situations. But we end up running it back, going into the boss again. We did lose 3-4 minutes off our timer though, but this time we play the fight to perfection. Everything goes right. We end up killing off the boss and moving on. And at this point, I'm looking at our timer and I'm thinking, maybe if I pull big enough and aggressively enough, we can actually still have a chance of timing this. So that's exactly what I do. We come into this first pull, I make sure to double it. I grab the warriors at the top of the stairs, I grab the patrolling warriors, and we are just nuking this whole pack down. I am trying to time this key still. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're making a beeline straight for it. We cleared out the front 2 packs in this area here, and all we have left is this mini boss and the boss with almost 6 minutes left on the clock. I wait for our healer to get some mana back before going in, and we are good to go as long as we have a clean run from here on out. The mini boss goes down, and now all that's left in the way of victory is 4.5 minutes on the clock and 1 boss. We won't have lust for this boss, but we have 4.5 minutes to do this on a 17. That should be more than enough time. I put a marker down right in the middle of these pillars and tell them in the chat, make sure that we're baiting in the first phase to triangle. We have 4 minutes to do this. It shouldn't be that bad. But of course, right away, we lose our hunter to the interrupting cloudburst, and he also had the infernal core on him. So he just wasn't receiving enough healing, and he goes down, and then shortly after, we lose our evoker as well. At this point, we only have 1 B-res. We decide to just wipe it out and try it again. And our second attempt doesn't go any better. This dragon just lives too long, gets too many infernal cores out, and we end up wiping it out. I could have lived right at the end there with Bubble, but seeing that we only had 1 res up and 3 people dead, I wasn't going to be able to salvage this. Turns out that some people weren't focusing the dragon in phase 2. So if you guys don't know that, it's very important to kill the dragon first in phase 2 because he rapid fires infernal cores. So some members in our group didn't know that. So that's why we ended up wiping twice so far on this boss. On our third attempt, it doesn't go any better. We end up losing people left and right and center on phase 2 of this boss here, just not being topped up before the infernal core rapid fire starts coming out. And we end up wiping it out again. Now, I know I'm going to get some people in the comments saying, oh, I didn't defensive here, I didn't defensive here. And I know I didn't, and it's because people were already dead, so I wasn't going to waste my buttons, because I know that we were just going to run it back again anyways. And then finally, after 13-14 minutes of progging this boss, on a 17, we get it down, and we can finally move on. This still gave us 95 IO though, bringing us up to 2219, and we got a pair of boots for an upgrade here. So the time was kind of worth it in my opinion. I mean, obviously I would have liked it if we would have timed the key, but sometimes this is just how it goes. And again, we are just aiming for 2500 IO, Keystone Hero, so any piece that gets us closer to that, even better. So we ended up getting invited to a plus 17 Nakud. We have 17 deaths on the board, but because of how aggressively I was pulling and keeping the pace of the key up, we're still on pace to time this key. And everything was going all right on this last boss until this crackling of people. We lose 2 members just off the raw damage alone, but luckily I see that we have 2 B-reses up, so I'm just trying to get some holy power here and get some reses out so we can finish off this boss. We have 1 minute and 40 seconds to finish this off. I'm in danger. I almost go down here, but I end up recovering. the dot just doesn't get cleansed off me that entire time, so that's just kind of unfortunate there. And we end up getting both reses out, very luckily, and we are able to keep on trucking away and trying to kill this boss. We ended up losing our priest to another crackling upheaval, and the issue here was he just didn't use the defensive at all for it, so he went down, and because of that, along with the other mistakes that people made in the key, we just didn't time it. We were over by 7 seconds. So if he would have stayed alive, that would have saved 5 seconds on our timer, plus the damage he would have contributed, we would have 100% timed it. So, very important, guys. Make sure you use your defensive on these abilities. You're not taking any other damage from the fights. Use your defensives, use your fade, use your dispersion, use something. But, you know, sometimes it's just like that. We spent 40 minutes in this key, and unfortunately didn't time it, but we still got a decent chunk of IO. While in LFG searching here, I start to wonder, like, what could I have done better in that last key to try to carry it more, try to time it, you know? So I open up our details logs just to see what's going on. So I open up our death log, and my only death is from when we wiped on Raging Tempest purposefully because everyone else was already dead. So people just falling over left and right doesn't really look great. So I'm like, alright, why did people fall over here? So let's look at the interrupt bar. You guys want the answer to why you're failing keys? Do some kicks. I have 60 kicks, and the next up is 7. 7! I have 53 more kicks than the next person. And I know, as a Prot Pally, I will always have more kicks than the next person. That's just playing Prot Pally. But that's just ridiculous. Crowd control's done. I have the most crowd controls done as well. And the only reason that the mage is up there as second place is for Ice Nova, which is for their DPS rotation. So it's not really doing anything in terms of actual crowd control here. So you're not using CCs and you're not using interrupts. That's probably why you guys are failing keys. You know, you could, as one person, I stopped almost every single cast in the dungeon, as well as did the most amount of crowd control stops on other casts and things like that as well. If one other person was contributing even half as much as I was, there would have been a lot less deaths, would have needed a lot less defensive usage, which wasn't used anyways, and we would have had a lot of better time trying to get through that key, guys. And then we start plugging away through some keys again. We get an 18 Court of Stars done, no problem. We almost plus 2'd it, but of course, if you guys have been watching the series, you know what happens every time we run Court of Stars. There are butt pulls after butt pulls after butt pulls, and this key was no exception whatsoever. But, you know what? We end up getting the key done. We end up pushing up a little bit more score, and we get 32 from it. So we're up to 23-23 now, which is within 200 pieces, within 200 IO of our goal. So that's pretty awesome. And we also got some hand upgrade here, which is the biggest upgrade that we could have got. It's 23 item levels. Super happy about that. And that brings us up to 400 item level, finally. Next up, we finally run our 20 Azure Vaults. And I end up pulling a little bit too big, and the group is just not having it. So people start dying, we miss a bunch of kicks, and you know what that leads to, especially in these keys. As soon as you get one wipe, everybody is just clocked out and nobody wants to play anymore. And that's exactly what happens here. We end up getting some levers after this, and we end up having to run the 19. So we'll just skip ahead to that. We get to the last boss of the 19 Azure Vaults, and I'm not gonna lie, this boss was a little scary for me. I probably didn't rotate my cooldowns properly on the Dragon Strikes, and they really trucked me. Like, there was a couple times where I thought I was gonna die on this fight, but luckily I ended up staying alive, and we ended up finishing the key off with 48 seconds left, getting a 19 Tyranical Azure Vault, 30 more score, and now we're 147 away from completing the Zero to Hero challenge. So, pretty happy. We pushed up to a 20 key as well. So, maybe we can get a 20 vault this week. That'd be pretty cool. And then go into a 421 piece of gear for next week. That'd be really awesome. But we do get a 20 hauls, and I know that that is healer hell on Tyranical Grievous, especially on Herja with the Eye of the Storm. So, it ends up, I mean, you guys will see. So we start our adventure off into our first 20 key ever on this character. And we get into our 20 Halls of Valor, doing this big triple pull right in the beginning. I'm just going to sit on this Thundercaller, make sure no casts go out. I tell everybody else to just rotate on the other Thundercaller. And we get through this pull without any problems, really. And it goes down a lot cleaner than I thought it would. I don't have to run through every defensive I have, which is pretty nice. And we make a good time out of it. For those of you that don't know, there is a tank buster mechanic, and it is a bleed. The thing is, when you're playing with an Evoker, they have an ability called Cauterize, and they can cleanse the bleed. And let me tell you, this guy did not make it easier for me to live on this fight. I didn't get cauterized a single time. Now, as a Prot Pally, I do have some options to deal with the bleed, which I did not follow through on because we had an evoker. And I was just under the impression that, hey, he's going to cauterize one of these bleeds. But because he doesn't, I end up having to spam wogs on myself this entire fight. I don't get a single verdant embrace the entire fight. And over time, I end up having to drop my readout, which is a crap ton of armor and defensives. And I end up dropping my Shield of Righteous as well, so I'm losing a bunch of armor from that. Our evoker also got killed by the first breath, so had to run a B-res on that. I'm too slow moving here. And while the rest of the team is going, I'm struggling. I'm really struggling to keep myself up from the grievous and from the bleed that's just not getting cleansed. So as a Prot Pally, I do have two ways to get rid of it. I can bop it off myself and then instant cancel the bop with the cancel bop aura, or I can do my bubble taunt to also remove a bleed, which in hindsight I probably should have done on the final one here, but I was just really stressing out to try to stay alive. I didn't know why I was dying so much until the death log came in and I looked through it and I saw I didn't get verdant embraced a single time, I didn't get cauterized a single time, and then this healer had the audacity to try to BM me afterwards in the chat. So like right here, I do end up dying, and the reason that I didn't use my bubble to stay alive on this is that I thought I would need my bubble for the next pull, in all honesty. And, you know, I figured at one point I would get cauterized for the bleed, but I just don't, and I die. And of course, that inevitably leads to the demise of the rest of my team as well. And I honestly, there's a lot of hate on Ragnaros and Azerlon players, and I really hate that this guy contributed to the stereotype of being toxic and like, you know, just huge ego play or whatever. We're all ready to keep on going, and the healer decides to just rip on us in chat right now. And I just asked him to cauterize one of the heals. You'll see, I'll show the chat in a second. And he's just not having any of it. He starts laughing and whatever else. I really hate this. Guys, some of the best keys I've ever played have been with Ragnaros and Azerlon players in Shadowlands. And, you know, there's toxic players on every server. I just hate that this guy contributed to the stereotype. And look, guys, I try to stay non-toxic. This guy says Pally needs heals, Ruffle. I just ask him to cleanse the bleed on CD, and he says, what a joke, STFU, and then leaves the party. So this is the discussion that happened when we wiped. I just asked him to cleanse the bleed so we could live, and he decided to trash on me instead, and then leave the party. So, you know, that's the kind of dice that we roll sometimes with these groups. And I know that I could have lived if I would have just used my bubble. And in retrospect, I shouldn't be relying on anybody in these keys besides myself, so I should have done it. However, you know, I just like to think the guy was 2800 IO, and for someone not to know that Paladins need heals during damage events, that just shows that the healer's inexperienced. So I'm trying not to hold it against him, but he was incredibly rude, and that's just not called for. The entire group, besides the healer, decides to stick together though, and I get very fortunate that our warrior has a 20 quarter stars key that I'm invited to. So we don't lose our chance at getting a 20 vault for the week. Unfortunately, our key got bumped down to a 19, but we're not letting it really take us down too badly. We're sending the 20 quarter stars, and we actually get through this pretty well. We actually time this key, and we're about a minute off of +2ing it, and we did have one shenanigan where an enforcer spawned on top of us during a mini-boss, and that's something that I should have known to watch out for. I should have pulled the mini-boss away from the enforcer spawn points because I've seen it happen, and I just didn't react to it. I'm not used to having the responsibility of pulling away from the enforcer spawns, but this time, we end up timing the key anyways, and that gets us up to 2375 score right now. So we're 125 away from 2500 IO. This has been an insane push today. We've got almost 500 score today. The group ends up sticking together for one more key with the exception of our healer. And the hunter just switched over to another character. I said completely fine because they were like 3k IO. And I make a mistake here of throwing my shield to silence this chill weaver for it to come in, and I get the juggernaut at the same time, and this just absolutely demolishes me. And, you know, I just wasn't expecting the shield bounce there, so now I know I can't be using my shield to silence that mob to pull it in. I thought it was pretty big brain to use the shield to use the silence there, so that way we can just, you know, run through and I don't have to worry about anybody getting the kicks on the way in. But that's the learning experience. Now we end up having to kill this other juggernaut. Puts us behind on our timer a little bit, but luckily, you know, we have a really good pumper group here. Everyone's doing really good damage, and, you know, one mistake isn't going to cost us the entire key. So we push forward, and we end up getting all the way through. we kill this first boss, and we are on still good pace. We're about a minute ahead of what my ideal pace is for this key even. On second boss here, there were a couple times where I thought I was going to die from the searing blows and the inferno dot overlapping, but our healer was super proactive about keeping me up, and we're on still amazing pace here. We have 14 minutes for the last part of the dungeon here, so nobody's stressing for time. All we have to do is complete the key. This boss actually hurt a lot more than I thought it would, and I probably could have rotated the defensive or two a little bit better, and I end up actually getting the bubble of shame from the Mistweaver here, but I think that ends up saving my life. So, you know, we use the cooldowns as needed. I do get the bubble of shame, and it does be like that sometimes, but I'm not really too worried about it. We have 2 minutes left to +2 this key after that horrendous wipe that I caused on the Juggernaut in the beginning. Our damage is just so good that it doesn't even seem to really matter. So we end up actually +2ing this key. We +2 a 20 ruby life pools on our 400 item level Prot Pala. So absolutely fantastic. We showed that we can tank 20s. You know, I'm really confident in our ability getting better, and now we're only 77 points off of our goal. So with that last key done, we finished our full vault of 3 Mythic Plus options, and we got up to 400.88 item level. We have pretty decent gear now. We still sit on a 372 trinket, unfortunately, but hopefully we can get something to replace that pretty soon. We also got enough primal concentrated infusions or focuses to upgrade one of our pieces. So after this, I end up going and upgrading my weapon to 418. So this was a pretty good session. We got 400 points, and we have 2 20s done. One of them was +2, which means we start with the 20 key next week. We can get our goal within the first couple of keys if we get some lucky groups going into next week. So I'm super happy about this, and it was a really productive session. Got some good groups that stayed together, and this is honestly what I think is the best way to climb. You just get groups of people who are good, and then you keep the good people and ask them if they want to do another key, and then ask those people if they want to do another key. And I ended up doing the keys with, you know, the same group of people for like the last 3 keys I did. So it really helps speed up the process when you get a group that works well together. And these guys were all super okay with me being low item level. They saw that I was, you know, competent enough on the spec I was playing, and that really made me feel good that, you know, I was able to recreate the experience that I did on my rogue when I was first starting to climb up, which was, you know, a long and grueling process. I was able to kind of streamline this with more game knowledge going into it on this character, where I'm able to control the pace of the dungeons, and I'm able to, you know, I'm friendly to people, which helps a lot. So people are more likely to stick around if you're not toxic, which is a big thing, and especially when pugging these lower keys. I find the 18 to like 20 range is pretty toxic. But I'll get more into my end game thoughts, I guess, if you will, when we're done the challenge finally, and I'll go over everything like that. So if you want to hear the synopsis of my experience doing the series, be sure to follow and subscribe. Like the videos, check out the stream at twitch.tv/chirpytv. I stream this character and this series live. I never play this character off stream, so be sure to come join in on the fun and watch me try to get 2500 IO. I appreciate everybody watching. I hope to see you guys next time. Thank you so much.